In the world of elite military training, there's no room for outliers. At the Naval Special Warfare Center in Coronado, California, where future giants are forged, one trainee was practically a ghost, a number, and a running joke. This is the story of Sarah Jenkins, a candidate in the planet's most demanding training pipeline. Basic underwater demolition SEAL training, or Bud S. In a unit of aspiring alpha males, she was the one everyone laughed at. Her drill skills were a mess, her movements were clumsy, and she was a constant source of amusement. But they all stopped laughing the day a legendary SEAL commander put a gun in her hands and gave her one simple order. Now, this story is fictional, but it explores some very real truths about resilience, perception, and the hidden strength inside the people we underestimate the most. In an arena where men are turned into weapons, she was seen as a flaw in the system. Every dropped rifle, every misstep, every moment of hesitation was met with sneers and laughter. The instructors, men hardened by war, saw her as a liability, a failed experiment. Her peers, desperate to prove themselves, used her as a stepping stone to feel superior in a place designed to make them all feel small. They called her Butterfingers Jenkins. They had a running bet on how long she'd last before she rang the bell, that symbolic brass instrument of surrender. For Sarah Jenkins, every single day wasn't just a battle against the punishing physical demands, but against the crushing weight of being utterly alone. The outcast the Coronado sun was merciless, beating down on the black asphalt of the grinder, a sacred courtyard where generations of SEALs had been made and broken. For Bud S Class 347, it was just another day of carefully planned suffering. Trainee Sarah Jenkins stood in formation, her body a coiled spring of tension. The command came, "Port, arms." In a single motion, 99 rifles snapped into position, a perfect symphony of wood and steel. But for Jenkins, something went wrong. Her grip, slick with sweat, faltered. The rifle didn't fall, but it wobbled an awkward dip that ruined the uniform line of weapons. It was a tiny mistake. But in Bud S, there are no tiny mistakes. A ripple of snickers went through the ranks. Jenkins could see Miller, a broad-shouldered trainee from Texas, shake his head in mock pity. Davis, his buddy, mouthed the word pathetic to the guy next to him. The instructor, Senior Chief Petty Officer Thorne, a man who looked like he was carved from granite, stopped his pacing. His icy eyes locked onto Jenkins. "Jenkins," he barked, his voice a growl. "Is that rifle too much for you to bear? Is it getting heavy?" "No, Senior Chief," Jenkins yelled back, her voice strained. "Or are your hands simply not designed to hold a weapon?" The laughter was louder this time. Shame crept up Jenkins' neck like a hot rash. She stared straight ahead, her knuckles white on the rifle. The weight wasn't the problem. The problem was the performance, the rigid, unnatural theater of drill dot. This was her life at Bud S. On the obstacle course, she'd snag a boot on the cargo net. In the 4-mile timed runs, she was never at the front, always finishing in the middle, a grimace on her face that her peers mistook for weakness. They saw a woman struggling to keep up. They didn't see her lungs, which could hold a breath for over 4 minutes. They didn't see her body's incredible ability to recover, a product of pre-dawn regimens no one knew about. The isolation was as brutal as any exercise. In the chow hall, tables would magically fill up when she approached. Sabotage was subtle. An extra sandbag might find its way into her rucksack. Her gear might get accidentally kicked under a bunk. One afternoon, during log PT, her team was falling behind. Miller, the self-appointed leader, shot her a venomous glare. "Pick it up, Jenkins." "You're dragging us down." Her muscles screamed. She stumbled, and the log collapsed. Thorne was on them in an instant. "On your backs." He roared. "You want to fail as a team?" You can get wet as a team. Go say hello to the water. For the next hour, they endured surf torture, lying in the cold Pacific as waves crashed over them. As she shivered, Jenkins could hear Miller's voice, low and menacing. "This is on you, Jenkins. You don't belong here. Go home." Staring up at the gray sky, another memory surfaced. Not of this punishment, but of real cold. The shocking cold of a half-frozen mountain lake at 4 a.m. A mentor's voice echoed in her head. Pain is a signal. It is not a barrier. Analyze it. Control it. Use it. She closed her eyes, separating the cold from the failure. Her shivering subsided. Her breathing steadied. When Thorne finally called them out of the water, her peers were blue-lipped and trembling. Jenkins walked out of the surf, tired but under control. They saw the woman who got them punished. They didn't see the one person in the group who had just spent an hour mastering it. The unseen preparation. The laughter and the scorn were all based on one flawed assumption, that what they were seeing was the real Sarah Jenkins. They saw a clumsy recruit. What they didn't know was that they weren't watching a novice learn. They were watching an expert unlearn. Her life before Bud-S was a secret. Raised by a reclusive demolition expert, her childhood was a curriculum of unorthodox skills. While other kids were at summer camp, she was learning to identify explosives by scent. Her playground was the rugged wilderness. Her father taught her that the body was a system that could be optimized. She practiced holding her breath in icy lakes, pushing past the 4-minute mark to master her body's panic response. Her fumbling with the drill rifle was a source of deep internal conflict. Her hands, so steady when disarming a complex IED, felt alien performing the showy movements of a drill manual. Her entire being was screaming that this was the wrong way to hold a weapon. It was inefficient. It was loud. It was a performance. Her father had taught her that real survival is about silence, efficiency, and surprise. Her average performance in runs was also a form of camouflage. She wasn't just running. She was practicing energy conservation. While her peers burned out to be first, she was training to be the last one standing. This was her secret. She wasn't at Bud-S to learn how to be a warrior. She was there to learn how to be a teammate, to fit a lifetime of solitary skills into the rigid framework of the world's most elite unit. But first, she had to endure being seen as a total failure. Section 3. The Catalyst. The Commanders. Arrival weeks turned into a grueling month. The class had shrunk, but to everyone's surprise, Jenkins was still there. Battered and bruised, but she never quit. Every morning she got up. Every day she endured. Then everything changed. News shot through the compound. Commander Thorne was on base. Not just any commander, but the Commander Thorne, a living legend in the SEAL teams. A man who led missions in every shadow-drenched corner of the globe. His presence was an event. He was the quiet professional, unbelievably lethal. Class 347 was assembled on the shooting range for a lev-fire drill with their sidearm. The Sig Sauer P2 26. Commander Thorne arrived with no entourage. He was average height, with a wiry build. He wore simple fatigues, no rank visible, but everyone knew exactly who he was. His pale blue eyes swept across the line of trainees, missing nothing. The top shooters stood a little taller. Miller, who had the best pistol score, had a confident smirk on his face. He was sure the commander would stop and offer some praise. But Thorne walked right past him. He walked past all the class studs, the golden boys who never fumbled or stumbled. And then he stopped, right in front of Sarah Jenkins. The whole class seemed to suck in a collective breath. The instructors looked confused, even worried. This was the class screw-up. What was the commander doing? Miller's smirk vanished, replaced by a look of disbelief, which then morphed into a smug certainty that Jenkins was about to be humiliated in front of a living legend. This, he thought, is going to be epic. Thorne just looked at Jenkins, his gaze analytical. He saw the tension in her shoulders, but he also saw the deep calm in her eyes. He saw something familiar, a quiet fire he'd only seen in the most seasoned operators. Slowly, Commander Thorne holstered his own sidearm. A customized Sig Sauer P226, weathered from years of use. He didn't offer it to an instructor or a top shooter. He held it out, grip first, to Sarah Jenkins. The silence on the range was absolute. The commander's voice was low and calm. "Show me what you've got, soldier." The climax, the reveal. For a moment, Sarah Jenkins just looked from the weapon to the commander's eyes. She didn't see a test. She saw an acknowledgement, a professional challenge to drop the act. And in that moment, she decided the time for hiding was over. She took the P226. The transformation was instantaneous. The clumsy trainee vanished. In her place stood someone else entirely. Her posture shifted, becoming coiled and predatory. Her hands, the ones that fumbled on the grinder, were now a blur of fluid motion. She chambered around with a nearly silent rack of the slide. Her eyes locked onto the targets. She raised the pistol, not in the textbook two-handed grip they'd been taught, but in a modified single-hand combat stance, a technique used by elite operators. A gasp went through the line. That wasn't in the manual. Before anyone could process it, she began. It wasn't slow, deliberate fire. It was a controlled explosion of speed and precision. Pop, pop, pop. 3 shots in under a second. 2 to the body, 1 to the head. The Mozambique drill. Textbook, but at a speed none of them thought was possible. Without pausing, she transitioned. Pop, pop, pop. Same result. She flowed down the line of 5 targets, 3 rounds each. 15 shots. Less than 10 seconds. A perfect score. The only sound was the tink, tink, tink of hot brass on the concrete. But she wasn't done. As the slide locked back on an empty magazine, she performed a combat reload. Her left hand produced a fresh magazine as if from thin air. She ejected the empty, slapped the new one home, and released the slide in a single motion that took less than a second. The instructor's jaws were slack. Miller and Davis looked like they'd seen a ghost. They weren't just watching a good shooter. They were watching a master. This wasn't something you learn in a few weeks. This was thousands of hours of obsessive practice. Jenkins cleared the weapon, her movements still impossibly fast. She turned, faced Commander Thorne, and held the pistol out to him, grip first. Her face was calm, her breathing even. Commander Thorne took his weapon back. He didn't smile. He just gave a single, slow, almost imperceptible nod. He looked at her, then his gaze swept across the stunned faces of the trainees and instructors. His voice, still quiet, hit them with the force of a hammer blow. "Calm is contagious," he said, a well-known SEAL saying. But so is panic. Focus is also contagious. True capability needs no announcement. It is demonstrated. The aftermath and vindication. The commander's words hung in the air like a final verdict. He gave Jenkins one last look, a look of profound respect, then turned and walked away. The silence that followed was different. It was the deafening silence of revelation. The worldview of Class 347 had been shattered in 30 seconds. No one looked at Jenkins with ridicule anymore. They looked at her with a mix of awe, confusion, and a deep, unsettling respect. The whispers started again, but they were different now. Where did she learn that? Did you see that reload? Miller and Davis avoided her eyes, their faces a mask of shame and fear. They hadn't just been mocking a clumsy trainee. They had been mocking a tiger that had, for its own reasons, decided to act like a house cat. The senior chief approached Jenkins, his face grim. The derision was gone, replaced by raw respect. "Jenkins," he said gruffly, "get back in line." The order was the same, but the meaning had changed forever. From that day on, nobody ever laughed at Sarah Jenkins again. The taunts stopped. The isolation ended. She had proven that the most dangerous person in the room is rarely the loudest. True strength doesn't need to boast. It just waits for its moment. The story of Sarah Jenkins is fictional, but it hits on a powerful truth. Never underestimate anyone. It's about the resilience it takes to endure judgment while quietly knowing what you're capable of. It's also important to ground this story in reality. As of early 2026, no woman has yet completed the incredibly difficult training pipeline to become a Navy SEAL. The standards are uncompromising, and the challenge remains one of the toughest in the world. However, real-world barriers are being broken. In 2021, a female sailor made history by completing the grueling 37-week training course to become a Special Warfare Combatant Craft Crewman, SWCC. SWCCs are the elite operators who pilot high-speed boats, transport SEALs, and conduct their own classified missions. Her amazing accomplishment, and that of other women breaking into units like the Army's Special Forces, proves that the spirit of Sarah Jenkins, one of grit, determination, and unyielding strength, is very much alive. These stories, both real and imagined, remind us that heroes are forged in many forms. For more stories that challenge assumptions and celebrate the human spirit, make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell.